mtandj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms. People across Alabama are hurting. Elected leaders have bailed out corporations while sending only a one-time cash payment to working families despite record unemployment and a public health crisis. Hometown Action is fighting for working people across Alabama to build inclusive and sustainable small town and rural communities. Hometown Action demands that Congress pass a people's bailout that expands health care, sends cash payments to families, and invests in green jobs to restart the economy. Now is the time to act. Learn more at www.hometownaction.org.
The Democratic Socialists of America, aka the DSA, is holding its first official recruitment drive with the goal of reaching 100,000 active members. The DSA is not a political party, but a grassroots organization of community members, with each chapter having its own local and regional issue campaigns in addition to national initiatives. Birmingham DSA, for example, has prioritized distributing masks and other necessities through their Direct Snaction program. They have also been working in coalition with the People's Budget Birmingham to make the city for the many, not the few. The Charleston, South Carolina DSA has been working hard to protect at-risk tenants through their National Eviction Moratorium Awareness Community Canvassing campaign. The Metro DC DSA hosts Socialist Night School online seminars to educate their members. They recently had a section on the history of the Alabama Communist Party in coalition with the North Alabama and Birmingham DSA chapters. The New York City DSA has their Sing in Solidarity choir, while here in North Alabama we are focused on helping local businesses convert to union shops or worker-owned and operated cooperatives. Every chapter is unique and responsive to the needs of their community with their member-selected projects, and each chapter knows that it is necessary, but not sufficient, to just understand the problems facing our communities and workplaces. The point is to change them. If you are an essential worker, a union member, a teacher, a nurse, or a community activist working for social, racial, and economic justice, if you recognize that democracy restricted to the voting booth is democracy in name only, the DSA wants you. To join, visit act.dsausa.org/donate/membership2020 or reach out to your local chapter to go ahead and get started. You can reach the North Alabama chapter on Facebook and at DSA North Alabama on Twitter or dsanorthalabama@gmail.com. The Birmingham chapter can be reached on Twitter at BhamDSA. Again, that is at DSA North Alabama or at BhamDSA on Twitter and via Gmail at dsanorthalabama@gmail.com. There are also chapters in Auburn, Montgomery, Atlanta, Memphis, Chattanooga, and the Middle Tennessee region. The DSA looks forward to having you in the struggle for real freedom and justice for all.
WVNN. Depend on it. You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
The time has come for America to hear the truth.
We are going to stand with them, and not only are we going to fight for their rights, but we're going to stand up for our rights here in our state, in our homes, and in our community. One day longer, one day stronger. One day longer, one day stronger. Because the future of labor's rights in the United States of America is not going to be decided in the courts. It's not going to be decided in Congress. It's not going to be decided on talk radio, and it sure is not going to be decided on Fox News. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong.
Good morning, Tennessee Valley. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host and fellow agitator, David Story. It is Saturday, November 14th, 2020, and we are broadcasting live online and on the radio on WVNN in the Huntsville, Decatur, Athens listening area from Athens, Alabama. The recording of this program will play tomorrow, Sunday, November 15th, 2020, on the great WGOL in Russellville, Alabama. Today, we're talking to two amazing organizers who stole our AFGE Machinists Union dynamic, but we're not going to hold that against them. Talking to Douglas Williams and Bryan Conlon. We'll be talking about an announcement from the Alabama Department of Labor, taking your calls and more on today's Valley Labor Report. So thanks for tuning in, folks. We appreciate your time. If you want to see what we're up to throughout the week, get our snide quips about the news of the day, then you should follow us on social media. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/The Valley Labor Report. We're on Twitter at Labor Reporters. I'm on Twitter at JacobM_AL. David is on Twitter at Radical Unionist. That's spelled RADICL Unionist. If you missed part of the show and want to go back and watch it later, you can search YouTube for The Valley Labor Report and subscribe to our channel. You can go back and watch the full show there, and we clip segments that you can watch throughout the week. We also upload the program on more than 11 different podcasting apps. So, to see if we are on your listening platform of choice, go to thevalleylaborreport.transistor.fm/subscribe.
Or you can go to our website.
Yes, now we have a website.
We've got a website, and it's being populated every day with the new podcast. So you can check it out at thevalleylaborreport.org on the World Wide Web.
thevalleylaborreport.org. And finally, if you appreciate our work and want to help us stay on the air, consider throwing us a couple dollars a month on patreon.com/thevalleylaborreport. That'll really help us out, and we really appreciate our current patrons. So, like I said, we have got two fantastic organizers here. We're not going to hold it against them that they're stealing our AFGE, Machinists Union dynamic, but we appreciate them taking their time. Douglas Williams is an organizer for the Machinists Union, and Bryan Conlon is an organizer for AFGE. Regular listeners of the show will know that I'm a member of AFGE. David is a member of the Machinists Union, and both Bryan and Douglas are contributing editors for StrikeWave. So make sure you follow their work. They're both on Twitter. They both write regularly for StrikeWave, so I highly recommend y'all check them out. Folks, thanks for Douglas, Bryan. Thanks for talking to us this morning.
Stoll, how dare you? How dare you?
We are the originators of the AFGE IAM partnership. But, just to correct you really quick, I don't want to steal valor or anything. I am an education representative for the Machinists Union.
Douglas doesn't organize crap.
Wow, that's harsh.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I've seen how you keep your apartment. There's nothing organized about that.
Well, y'all don't. I'm not gonna have y'all over for dinner.
Strap in, folks.
It's fantastic to be on this show. Someone that used to live in Tuscaloosa. That's where I started my PhD. One of the first sort of blog posts that I ever wrote about was the need for more labor media in the South, right? When I've taught union members, one of the questions that I ask is, can anyone here name any pro-labor media sources? In the 2 years that I have taught, I've maybe gotten 2 distinct answers. It is something that is very rare, right? And the rarity of it means that we're reliant on, news and media sources that aren't particularly friendly to our cause, to our members' cause, and to our collective cause as the working class, to sort of decide and shape these issues that are milling about today, right? And all too often, those issues are not shaped in a way that really sort of puts forth the cause for acting collectively, for unionizing, for deciding that it is the workers who create the wealth and not, you know, a CEO or CFO that's never turned a wrench in their life, right? So, you know, I'm glad that y'all are on the air here in North Alabama and that y'all are doing this work because it's absolutely necessary.
Yeah, I just completely agree with all of that.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're picking up your Southern accent just real quick. Like I didn't notice a Southern accent when we was at W3, but now all of a sudden I'm hearing this Southern drawl come out. So,
I will say,
Is Doug
like
pulling a Hillary
when
Clinton
he was,
on us?
yeah,
when he
Doug
was in
is
Detroit,
pulling the HRC on us.
when he was in Detroit, it was much thinner. But as soon as he moved to Maryland, it thickened up. And whenever he visits his family in Tidewater, it goes all the way to 10.
Yeah. Hey, we're really appreciative of y'all coming on and what you say as well, because like you said, we don't have, you know, any labor friendly media whatsoever. Not just, you know, talk radio airways have been taken over by ultra conservatives, radical ultra conservatives, and you know, on TV you really don't see anything. You know, even on the more liberal channels, there's nobody talking to working class out there whatsoever. It's either ultra elitist liberals or it's right wing conservatives, and there's a reason why the working class in the South have turned away from Democrats, because there's nobody talking to them.
Well, and turned away from Democrats and some of the mainstream media. Like I saw a tweet from Joy Reid. She's a MSNBC contributor or host or something, and she was talking about how Tupperville was elected in Alabama, and she was like, you know, don't shrug when you get the shade or something like that. And it's like, no wonder Alabamians hate you, and like for good reason. Like you're an elitist, you know, liberal hack like that. You know, you're not gonna win anything like that. Talking about like, oh, because you voted for this person, like you deserve like to die. And no doubt she's gonna have a story about how Trump isn't going to be sending the vaccine to New York, and she's gonna complain about that, and rightfully so. But you know, she's doing the exact same thing to Alabama. So it's really frustrating, and you know, I appreciate it, and we hope to kind of provide a platform to educate folks about labor issues, about unionization, and how important that is, because that, you know, they don't hear that a lot.
And not just that too, like even the left outlets, and one of the reasons why y'all are so unique and why I'm so glad to be on is even sort of the left outlets that we do have a tendency to devalue, like the Southern Front. Mm-hmm. Like they have a tendency to ignore or condescend or talk junk about Southern organizing, because this is a place that a lot of people just genuinely don't have an understanding of the nuance and the complexity of the way things.
Nope. Sounds like we lost Bryan for a minute.
We still got Doug.
Can you hear me?
Okay.
There you go.
There we
go.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, I was basically saying like the pro worker outlets that we tend to have, like they tend to devalue and ignore the South as an avenue of struggle, like as a place to fight, and it's extremely destructive. So
yeah, well, not only that, we also see it in our own unions as well. You know, I'm constantly following my union, my International's Facebook page, Twitter page, and things like that, and they'll make a post, and I'll see like troves of people coming out of the Northeast and the West saying, you know, talking crap about, you know, us in the South, and we're working our tails off, and y'all are too. You know this. Everybody down here is killing themselves, organizing like crazy daily.
Yeah, I'll tell you one thing. Like one of the reasons why the APWU is as effective as it is because their current national president, Diamondstein, he cut his teeth in Greensboro, North Carolina. He's from up north, but he did all his union work in North Carolina. Like, you learn how to be tough in places that are hostile to where you're doing work, to the work you're doing. And, not for nothing, it is much easier to talk to somebody about union stuff in Detroit than it is in Raleigh.
Yeah. And it's the same way with y'all's national, with AFGE. Y'all's national president has been on our show a couple of times, and man, he's just excellent, and straight out of the South. He came out of Southern.
Yeah, my national president came out of Anniston Army Depot. He was the first black president there, and he got his he got bricks thrown into his home, cat urine left on left in his mailbox. So he's really had to deal with it. We definitely appreciate Southern organizing. But we're going to talk some more after the break. Stay tuned. This is the Valley Labor Report.
You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time, but the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maple, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtandj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
All workers deserve fair wages, affordable health care, and a retirement plan that enables them to retire with dignity. All workers deserve to have a say about the terms and conditions of their employment, not just the bosses. With the Machinists Union's over 600,000 members having our back, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama has been serving workers' interests for over 20 years. Our members have the best health insurance in the area with zero deductible plans. We set the bar for pay in the area with over $40 an hour rates, consistently averaging the highest non-college degree jobs in North Alabama with some of the best retirement plans in the industry. We can do the same for you. Together, we remain united, raising our voices to ensure justice on the job and service in the community. The Machinists Union is a true Southern union founded in Atlanta in 1888. We have been serving members' needs for 132 years. The longevity of our union proves our dedication and loyalty to the working class. The Machinists Union isn't just for machinists. We represent workers in government, healthcare, auto workers, aerospace workers, transportation workers, the defense industry, and woodworking. Our members even build the iconic Harley-Davidson motorcycles. If you're ready to get serious about better benefits and wages, if you want to have a voice in your workplace with over 600,000 members to back you up, call or email us today at 256-286-3704 or organize at iamaw44.org.
Here in Huntsville, federal employees are an invaluable part of the nation's defense, offering unmatched expertise in engineering and technology and as stewards of taxpayer dollars. What we ask for in return is to be treated with fairness, dignity, and respect. The American Federation of Government Employees, AFGE Local 1858, is a union of working people looking out for each other, making sure that we're treated right. To inquire about joining or to learn more, call 256-876-4880.
Hey y'all, are you tired of hearing that the South is just a bunch of racist rednecks? Well, tune in to Dixieland of the Proletariat podcast. We talk about Southern working class history and current events through a leftist perspective. Join Nelson, Senior Telecommunications Director Tommy, Comrade Kate, former pig farmer Tyler, and Brother William, wherever you stream your podcast. And good Lord willing and the creek don't rise, we'll see y'all next time. It's Dixieland of the Proletariat, y'all.
WVNN.
long-haired preachers come out every night. I try to tell you what's wrong and what's right.
Welcome back to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host David Story. On the line, we've got Douglas Williams, an organizer and educator with the Machinists Union, and Bryan Conlon, an organizer with AFGE. Both of them are contributing editors to Strike Wave. And so we were talking, where we left off, we were talking about Southern organizing and things like that. And Bryan is in North Carolina doing organizing for AFGE. Douglas has done organizing in the South. He educates people who do organizing in the South. So talk to us about what is y'all's, what is your game plan for organizing Southern workers? Like what is kind of the path that y'all follow, and what would you say to organizers down here that are trying to do the work? Like what would your advice be, so to speak?
The thing about organizing down here and organizing in open shop contexts in general is that things like open shop laws, what most everybody calls right to work laws, but I refuse to, is that they don't prevent organizing, just prevent crack organizing. It is, you can see multiple victories have taken place in the South and in North Carolina specifically. Things like the UFCW fight at Smithfield has built a really strong fighting union, and it took them 10 years to do it. Mm-hmm. NNU just recently won at Mission Hospital in Asheville in a 2-1 stomp, like wasn't even close. And so they're setting up to do a really tough contract campaign because their bosses there were basically like putting out wanted dead or alive posters for union activists at the hospital. Yeah. So a lot of it is just like the biggest impediment to Southern organizing is, more than anything, a lack of investment in the organizers already doing the work down here. Like, that's the thing that is getting in the way more than anything else. I field probably like 24 to 36 like serious, hey, I'm looking to organize conversations every single year. And the issue is, I don't have the capacity to do that. I can't, and if they're private sector, I'm not going to touch them because AFGE doesn't organize private sector unions. And so I hand them off to other unions, but they don't necessarily have the capacity either. And that's the tough part. Like, whenever we run into sort of a hot shop situation, like there's always more interest in organizing than there are people to actually follow up on organizing leads.
Yep. I seen it's interesting that you say that, because I seen earlier in the week somebody commented on Twitter about the amount of money that was invested in several of these campaigns, especially in Georgia, and said, just imagine if that money had been invested in true labor organizing, the difference it would make. I mean, look at all the money that's going out to these politicians. It's doing absolute jack crap for us all. And we just don't have the funds or the resources or the manpower, to organize the amount that needs to be organized in the South.
Mm-hmm.
And, you think about a campaign like, say, Amy McGrath's in Kentucky, right?
Yeah, perfect example.
I mean, you have a Senate candidate who raised the equivalent of the entire fiscal year 2020 city budget for Homestead, Florida, right? And she got curb stomped by Mitch McConnell.
Yeah, and who didn't see that coming?
Yeah.
And that is, when people look at the South, they look at a map, right? They look at these sort of, visuals that are meant to sort of give generalizations, and they take those generalizations and they turn them into totalities. Well, here's the thing. When the actress who played Deanna Troi on Star Trek says, oh, well, Texas is the first one to reach 1 million cases, and oh, guess what? They voted for Donald Trump. Well, so, okay. But let's be honest about something. The Democratic Party, is the level of investment that they have had in the South over the last 30 years has pretty much been nil, right? So, one, they don't see those sorts of organizing efforts in front of them. And two, Texas is a majority minority state, right? Aside from Kentucky and I believe Louisiana, every state in the South is at least a quarter people of color, right? And to be honest, bashing the South and wishing bad things on them just because they don't vote for your sainted chosen candidates, right, that ain't never showed up anywhere anyway, right? It's kind of racist also, and it's really just bad politics. When it comes to union organizing, though, I know we're coming up against the top of the hour, so I'll make this quick. When it comes to union organizing, we simply don't have the conversations, right? Because we don't have the resources, and we don't always have the boots on the ground to be able to spread our message of collective action where it needs to be spread. And when we get those leads, we're sometimes not able to follow up on them just because of a simple lack of manpower, right? And so instead of looking at us and saying, oh, we're a bunch of reactionaries, maybe you could look at us and say, how can I help? Right. What can I do?
Yeah. Exactly. And the one thing, and I just dealt with this yesterday, as a matter of fact, the singular one thing that gets in my way of organizing more than anything else is politics. I just talked to a guy yesterday that I was recruiting in our shop, just recently got hired, over there talking to him about signing a card. And the first question out of his mouth was, does our union contribute dues to politicians? And this is killing us. It's literally killing us.
Stay tuned. This is the Valley Labor Report.
Huntsville's #1 news, talk, and weather station. WVNN Athens. WVNN FM Trinity. A Cumulus station. It's 10 o'clock.
From ABC News, I'm Bryan Clark. President-elect Joe Biden told reporters in Delaware this morning he's closer to making decisions on the makeup of his cabinet. When Biden does take office in January, it will be amid a raging pandemic.
We're seeing more cases in more places than ever before. Unfortunately, the numbers are going up, and they're going to continue to go up and get worse.
That's former CDC Director Dr. Tom Frieden. A significant task for the Biden administration will be the distribution of a COVID-19 vaccine once one becomes available. President Trump said Friday that one is close.
No medical breakthrough of this scope and magnitude has ever been achieved this rapidly, this quickly.
But Dr. Moncef Slaoui, the head of Operation Warp Speed, told the Financial Times the White House Coronavirus Task Force must make contact with the Biden transition. He calls it a matter of life and death for thousands. ABC's Rachel Scott has more on that process.
Biden's team has been left in the dark because of this slow transition of power process that is happening right now. They've been unable to coordinate with the current White House Coronavirus Task Force or even have access to federal agencies and offices. Biden's team says they would like that critical information to address the crises that we are facing in real time.
And states are seeing big increases in COVID-19 case numbers. Over 190,000 were reported on Friday. Hospitalizations and deaths are also up nationwide. So are the number of new restrictions going into place, says ABC's Trevor Ault.
The governor of North Dakota with an about-face, issuing a statewide mask mandate as their state passed 700 deaths.
Our situation has changed, and we must change with it.
As the CDC predicts 282,000 American deaths by December 5th.
This morning in Washington, supporters of President Trump gathering near the White House. The president at his Virginia golf club. It's 1 week since Joe Biden was declared the winner of the election. You're listening to ABC News.
If you owe back taxes, there's a lot you need to know, starting with rule number 1. Don't mess with the IRS. They are cracking down this year by sending out heart-stopping letters, actively garnishing paychecks, levying bank accounts, and putting liens on homes and businesses. That's all true, but it's also true there's a way out. It's called the Fresh Start Initiative, an important government program for tax debt assistance. It's one of the biggest breaks the IRS has ever offered, so now's the time. You could qualify for tax relief that saves you thousands, even tens of thousands. Nobody knows this program like the award-winning experts at Optima Tax Relief. They have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and will fight to get you the best deal possible. Don't mess with the IRS. For tax help you need, for tax help you can trust, call Optima now for a free consultation.
Call 800-343-6460. 800-343-6460. 800-343-6460.
Optima Tax Relief.
Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
Hey y'all, are you tired of hearing that the South is just a bunch of racist rednecks? Well, tune in to Dixieland of the Proletariat podcast. We talk about Southern working class history and current events through a leftist perspective. Join Nelson, Senior Telecommunications Director Tommy, Comrade Kate, former pig farmer Tyler, and Brother William, wherever you stream your podcast. And good Lord willing and the creek don't rise, we'll see y'all next time. It's Dixieland of the Proletariat, y'all.
770 AM, 92.5 FM, WVNN. Depend on it.
Welcome back to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host David Story. We have got Machinists Union organizer and educator Douglas Williams, AFGE organizer Bryan Conlon, both of them contributing editors to Strike Wave. Talking to them, we left talking about how politics is really getting in the way of union organizing, and so I think we can talk a little bit about why that is and tie that into Biden's election. You know, Biden is now president-elect, and so, you know, give us y'all's thoughts on that, Douglas and Bryan. You know, what are your thoughts on the election of Biden and why it is that politics is really kind of getting in between David and his members in some cases?
So I think in a lot of ways you have you got to understand, right? The labor movement is a movement of people who come from the same neighborhoods as the rest of us, right? So, it's a very diverse movement ideologically. And part of the work is, one, getting rank and filers to care about politics at all, right? We sort of think that these folks should just be automatically tuned in to every development that's going on in DC or Montgomery. And to be honest, in a lot of ways, a lot of rank and file members are just like, well, that's stuff that happens out there, right? This does not have any real effect on my life. And when they do tune in, right, they tune in to politics and they have the same sort of mode and mindset that the folks at their church have, that the folks in their sort of civic organizations have, that, you know, these sort of community sort of pillars. And so how we have to talk about politics, to be honest, has to be different from talking about D's and R's, Democrats and Republicans.
Exactly.
We have to talk about issues, right? In a piece I wrote for Strike Wave, for example, you know, I noted the 2010 race for governor of Ohio and then the 2011 referendum on repealing a bill that would have stripped public employees of their collective bargaining rights. The same with the 2016 governor's race in Missouri and the 2018 referendum on right to work, right? So in those electoral contests, those partisan contests, right, you saw big turnout for the Republican candidate. But in these issue-based referendums, right, what you saw was a big turnout for labor. And I think what this shows is that if you can take labor issues and completely divorce them from the current mode of partisan politics, the working class is all about that stuff, right? You know, and that's what we have. We have to do a better job of using initiative and referendum abilities to put things on the ballot and get people their rights back without making it a thing about Democrat, Republican, or whatever, right?
And well, we don't even have to look at two separate elections in the past. We can look at 2020, where Donald Trump won Florida, and a $15 an hour minimum wage won with 60-something% of the vote.
Yeah.
Like, that means there was at least 10, 15, 20% of the electorate in Florida who voted for Trump and voted for a $15 an hour minimum wage.
Yeah. And even beyond sort of ballot initiative stuff, like North Carolina doesn't do tons of ballot initiative stuff. It all has to originate from the General Assembly if it ends up on the ballot. Like, even just sort of messaging more precisely about issues would probably pay dividends. One of the reasons why the Democratic nominee for the Senate here, a fella by the name of Cal Cunningham, one of the reasons he lost because he had a bimbo eruption, and he some sex he had with another man's wife came out, and the man is not smooth. We'll just get that out of the way right here. But part of the reason, like one of the reasons he lost is the now incumbent senator, Tom Tillis, was in North Carolina's General Assembly before he became a senator from North Carolina. One of the things he did in the General Assembly was utterly destroy the unemployment insurance system. There are tons of people in North Carolina who did not get their pandemic unemployment assistance for months because of the things that Tom Tillis did. Cunningham didn't say anything about that, didn't message on it, didn't talk about that track record of this is what Tom Tillis does when he has power. He is going to he is part of the reason why, like, you might have been late on your rent or mortgage. Like, do you really want to put him back in charge? Like, rather than messaging on that, like, the Democrats defaulted in a lot of ways to orange man bad. And yeah, like, I'll put this out here. I'm not a Trump supporter, never going to be a Trump supporter, but you've got to ultimately talk about the issues that affect people's lives, because if you don't, they're going to default to other things that matter to them.
Right. Well, too, you know, they talked about Orange Man bad, but it wasn't even just that, it was Orange Man exclusively bad. They had Republicans speaking at the DNC. Joe Biden's message for the past 2 years has been that Donald Trump is a unique phenomenon in the Republican Party, and there's lots of good Republicans, and in fact, I would love to have a Republican vice president. They're not even connecting the badness of Orange Man to the rest of his party, and they have fundamentally the exact same agenda, which is to destroy the power of working people. Donald Trump just also tweets mean things and calls women mean words. Like, that's the only difference. The actual agenda that the Trump administration has passed has been lockstep exactly what would have happened under a Rubio administration, under a Kasich administration, under a Bush administration. Nothing is different. Nothing is different at all. And Democrats are not, like you said, they're not connecting this administration to the negative results that people are feeling in their pocketbooks and in their lives, and they're saying that no, Trump is just a uniquely bad person, and we need to get him and him alone out of office. And they're leaving down ballot races out to dry, and as a result, they're leaving their constituents out to dry.
Why are we talking about John Kasich? Why are the Democrats even remotely talking about John Kasich?
He has no constituency.
Yeah, he has no constituency. He's he's the architect of the attempt to repeal public sector collective bargaining that got curb stomped in a ballot initiative in Ohio that Douglas mentioned. Like, it's this sort of retreat into, we just need to go back to the way things were in 2015, that creates this just this absolutely this absolute capitulation on the part of the Democrats. And this isn't anything new. You saw this in 2016, again in North Carolina, a field office for the Republican Party in the state. And keep in mind, all the bad things that Trump did while he was in office, all the destructive things he did in office were basically prototyped by the North Carolina Republican Party.
Yeah.
This office for the North Carolina Republican Party caught fire, and then a whole group of extremely dumb liberals decided to crowdfund to restore it because they apparently hadn't heard of things like fire insurance. And these are all people who are academics, and they're up in Yankeeville, and they've never set foot down here or done a single bit of work down here politically. And here they are, raising money for a party that literally 2 years later got caught attempting to steal a congressional election.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, here's the thing, and we say it all the time on this show. We're constantly, we call out both sides, but the fact is, the Democrats have done absolutely nothing to help our cause, throughout for as long as I can remember, to be completely honest. I mean, you look at what name something that Obama did in his first 2 years when he had the administration, and unlike Tommy Tuberville, I can figure out the three different separate forms of government. But when he had the administration and Congress on his side, what did he do for organized labor? Yeah, I mean, this is why the people in the South don't want to vote Democrat no more, because they recognize that the Democrats have turned so far away from working class politics that it's sickening now. It's sickening.
And another thing about Democrats they do not play to their base. Like Republicans, as soon as they get in office, they entrench their power, they destroy the Democrats' base by attacking organized labor. But Democrats, like you said, when Democrats get into office, they do not help build power for organized labor or anything like that. They leave us out on the vine, and they lose the next election because of it. Stay tuned. We're going to talk some more to Douglas and Bryan on the other side. This is the Valley Labor Report.
You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time, but the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maple, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtandj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms. The Valley Labor Report is also supported by listeners like you. If you value the work that we are doing, injecting a different perspective into talk radio, and you have the means, consider signing up for a monthly donation on patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. Again, that's patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report to support our work and keep us on the air. If you're looking for contractors with lower than average EMR and TRIR, if you need to supplement a workforce at any level for any amount of time, if you need iron workers that come trained and certified at no extra cost, or if you need workers from superintendent down to general laborer and you're looking to start work on a project, or you're unhappy with your current contractor situation, you need to call my friend Jeb Miles with the Iron Workers Local 477. They only work with the best in the business, vetted contractors, and can do all kinds of jobs from roofing to steel and bridge erection, from welding to heavy rigging, from structural repairs to machinery alignment, and much more. They supply manpower on 4 of the 5 largest projects in North Alabama, so you know they're legit. If you need good quality, safe, efficient, diligent, and knowledgeable workers on your job, then you need the Iron Workers Local 477. Call Jeb Miles at 256-383-3334. That's 256-383-3334, or via email at local477@bellsouth.net, and make sure you tell them that you heard about them on the Valley Labor Report.
770 AM, 92.5 FM, WVNN. Depend on it.
Let's go!
All right, folks, welcome back to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host David Story. On the line, we've got Douglas Williams, an organizer and educator with the Machinists Union, Bryan Conlon, an organizer with AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. Both of them are contributing editors for StrikeWave. Speaking of StrikeWave, tell us about y'all's work at StrikeWave. What is that outlet? What do y'all do?
Basically, we want to raise enough money to pay the best possible labor writers we can find, a decent wage to write stuff that matters to working people. So we've had folks like Kim Kelly, who's an absolutely brilliant labor writer, write about everything from nonprofit organizing to the freak show as a way for people with disabilities to get employment before the ADA. We also are always looking for new and interesting angles to pick up about this. We like identifying new talent. A fella out of Howard, Greg Morton, wrote an absolutely brilliant piece about the history of labor struggle in the NBA that I can't say enough good things about. We've had in the federal government, like somebody who's got some pedigree as far as federal labor, Leah Russell, who was with Fed News Network. They've written for us as well. Like, we've got some absolutely wonderful pieces and statements from union efforts and organizing. We've also done a really cool thing with an OSHA complaint tracker, where basically we track and map out every single OSHA complaint that's been made since like COVID-19's been a thing.
I saw this morning and was absolutely amazed at the data. Whoever wrote the code behind that was brilliant, because Kevin
Runig is the person who's responsible for that, and he does a decent amount of work with us. Really does deserve the credit, as does another editor for StrikeWave, Connor Lewis, who is a rep for NEA, a professional association in Pennsylvania.
Y'all have got all the heavy hitters there. I mean, really, y'all have got the because I think I caught up with Douglas I'd never really been on Twitter before until we started doing the show, and we were like, well, we got to get a presence out there. And so I caught up with him on Twitter when I joined and seen where he was writing at, and so I've been reading it ever since. And there's just, like you said, absolutely the best writers in the labor movement, bar none. It's, from what I've read the last 6 months.
Absolutely. And, one of the things that we try to do at StrikeWave is we try to be a voice, not just for working class labor struggle and stuff like that, and sort of be a megaphone for the folks who are doing the organizing and things of that nature. But we also try to be a megaphone for those writers who, may not be, as well established, as well, known as some of the other folks who do labor reporting, because, we really believe that when you expand the number of voices who are engaging in this work, it can only be a good thing, right? So we have been, sure to keep that at the center of our mission. And honestly, it's a labor of love for me. I love StrikeWave. I love the fact that we cover organizing. People need to understand that the victories you see at the end, that stuff's great. Absolutely. Right? But you got to know the sleepless nights, the nights away from family and friends, the, stress, right? All of the stuff that goes into that final victory shot where we get to say, X amount of members have now joined AFGE or the Machinists or the Iron Workers or whatever, right? Like there's a lot of work that goes into that. Absolutely. And we want to be sure to highlight that.
Yeah, there ain't no glamour in any of this. Like the glamour of the work wears off when it's 5:30 in the morning and you're out in front of a hospital flying workers on their way into work, and they're barely making eye contact and barely say anything to you.
Yeah. Well, you say there's no glamour in it, but there at the same time, all of us do it. Mm-hmm. And Jacob and I not only organize, he's over at AFGE, I'm with the Machinists, but we also created a branch of the Wobblies here in Huntsville, but specifically for organizing service industry, lower wage workers that are not that's never going to get a nod from one of these international or national unions. But to tie that into what you were saying, all of us do it because we love people. At the end of the day, every one of us, it may not be glamorous, but that feeling of connecting with people on that personal level and talking to them about kitchen table issues and how the union can help and how they can help themselves pull themselves up by these solidarity efforts. It's extremely important.
Absolutely. And it's like I would tell rank and filers in classes that I teach. It's like, how many of you are steward And, most people raise their hands and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, listen, right? We're here talking about organizing. And I know we like to think that it's some big, grand, complicated thing, but think about your role as a steward, right? You talk to people, you give them the info about the work that they need to do, either with a grievance or, if you're in a right to work state, talking to one of your coworkers who might not be a member and stuff like that, right? You have the skills already. Being a steward is part lawyer, part organizer, and part therapist, right? And it's about letting people know that they do the basic work of organizing every day. Now it's about harnessing that to make sure that we build our members up internally, and as well as organize new shops as well.
Yeah. Yep, exactly.
Yeah. We have just 2 or 3 more minutes before we head on into the break. And David and I were talking in the last break about keeping y'all on for the last 30 minutes and seeing if anybody wanted to call in and talk, see if they had any questions for y'all. Is that all right with y'all?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
The number is, folks listening, the number is 1-866-494-9866. Again, the number is 1-866-494-WVNN. If you want to talk, we've got 4 Southern organizers talking to you today. So that is a lot more than you're going to get.
And nobody's had a disagreement yet. That's how
man,
I mean, we've been talking for, what, an hour now, and nobody's disagreed? Yeah.
So
that's unbelievable.
Yeah, give us a call, 1-866-494-9866, 1-866-494-9866. David, you had something to say before we got off?
No, I was saying put your lips up a little bit closer to that mic, because I couldn't hear you that well.
Yeah,
we're all organizing. We're all out doing this, and a lot of times we got about a minute left, so I'll go into this. A lot of times people don't realize, we get this, the unions in general, the union members in general, get this flack saying that we're greedy union members. We're looking out for ourselves, and the fact is, Douglas is a prime example. Being a third generation unionist, I'm a third generation unionist in Alabama, which is almost unheard of. But we're doing it because somebody done it for us before we got here. And that's the only reason why I'm organized as hard as I do, because the folks that came before me built my wages to where they are. I didn't get here by myself. They put in the legwork long before I got here, and I'm hoping to put in the legwork so that our children, your children, my children, and people's children that I don't even know are going to have a good life. And that's something the stereotypical greedy union member just don't float here.
No, I mean, we are caretakers of the movement. We don't own it. Somebody handed it to us, and we will hand it to somebody else when the time comes.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly right. Like, nobody's getting rich off of this. I've talked about how often David is going on these trips. David is doing a bunch of work, and he ain't making extra money for it. That's for sure.
Nobody's making extra money.
Stay tuned. We've got a caller on the line. We'll talk to him on the other side. This is the Valley Labor Report.
You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison. This is News Talk 770 AM, 92.5 FM, WVNN. News starts now.
Coronavirus cases in the U.S. nearing 1 million in a single week, and another daily record broken. More than 193,000 new cases reported in just the last 24 hours. Former CDC Director Tom Frieden saying to keep kids in school, limit contact over the holidays.
We're seeing more cases in more places than ever before. Unfortunately, the numbers are going up, and they're going to continue to go up and get worse.
Several state and local officials have announced new lockdowns, hospitals across the country reaching capacity, and Nevada Governor Steve Sisolak saying he's tested positive for COVID-19, the fifth governor to report testing positive for the coronavirus this year. On his way to a Saturday golf outing, President Trump's motorcade this morning taking a deliberate loop around Freedom Plaza, where a large group of Trump supporters were assembled today. Iota, now the 30th named storm of this year's record-breaking Atlantic hurricane season, forming in the Caribbean, expected to strengthen into a major hurricane as it approaches Central America. Dave Packer, ABC News.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time, but the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maple, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtandj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms. People across Alabama are hurting. Elected leaders have bailed out corporations while sending only a one-time cash payment to working families despite record unemployment and a public health crisis. Hometown Action is fighting for working people across Alabama to build inclusive and sustainable small town and rural communities. Hometown Action demands that Congress pass a people's bailout that expands health care, sends cash payments to families, and invests in green jobs to restart the economy. Now is the time to act. Learn more at www.hometownaction.org. The Valley Labor Report is also supported by listeners like you. If you value the work that we are doing, injecting a different perspective into talk radio, and you have the means, consider signing up for a monthly donation on patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. Again, that's patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report to support our work and keep us on the air.
The Dale Jackson Show, a safe space for terrible people. Weekdays, 7 to 11 a.m., only on WVNN. WVNN.
Georgia Borderland, a population burned up, bled dry. The marginalized multiply, and unite to fight.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is David Story. On the line, we have as guests Douglas Williams, an organizer and educator with the Machinists Union, Bryan Conlon, an organizer with AFGE, both of them contributing editors at Strikewave. Calling in, we have Jonathan on the line. He wanted to talk to us about politics getting in the way of organizing in the South. So, Jonathan, you're on the air. What was your comment?
Jonathan?
Oh no, did we lose him?
He's queued up.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Hey, sorry about that. All right, so I know that earlier you were discussing how it's been difficult to connect with the conservative, it's kind of the Republican voter here in the South when you're trying to bring in workers. And I think that you can do that. It's really about messaging, because the Republican concept, the conservative concept, is we want people who work to get paid and people who don't work not to, right? We value the value of labor. And when we hear, a lot of times the message that we hear from organized labor is we want to figure out how to more equitably split the pie, whereas what we want to hear is how can we make more pie to split? You know what I mean? And that's really the difference there. And I mean, there are some things that you could key on that I think would get you a lot more traction. For instance, would you guys support an across-the-board embargo on Chinese imports until such time that all of the slaves in China, there's 4 million of them, are released verifiably? That's the kind of message that would really do a lot of good things for catching fire in the conservative ranks here in the South. I mean, my son's a union member, and I think the union's been good for him. But the concept of class warfare doesn't play well in the South too well. You know what I mean?
Well, now as far as Chinese imports, unions always use American union labor, American union-made products. They do not, anytime a union buys anything, it has to be made in America by American union labor. So.
Well, I think what he's talking about is on a legislative or a level, would the unions support an embargo?
Exactly.
I can say personally, I've been very outspoken on tariffs. I think I love the tariffs. That was one of the things that I actually cheered on Donald Trump early on for, was putting the tariffs in place. But what Douglas or Brian, y'all have any comments on that?
Doug, do you want this one, or do you want me to take it?
Sounds like Doug may still be out on a smoke break. Brian?
No, he's here. He's here.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, I think part of the problem is I don't think the problem is you've got a super majority of the people running the show who wouldn't agree to those tariffs because they like cheap labor, and that includes right-wing politicians
and left-wing politicians.
The problem with it more than anything else is it's really selective. People are more than willing to talk about China, but they aren't willing to talk about Thailand. A while ago, I wrote a piece about why unionism needs to be internationalist and needs to be concerned about the interests of all working people, because if it isn't, it is too easy to pit one chunk of the working class against another chunk. I single out Thailand because y'all ran an ad with of the machinists talking about how Harley Davidsons are union made. Well, Harley is offshoring a lot of stuff to Thailand, and Thailand is currently run essentially by a military dictatorship with a monarchy put in charge, and there's ongoing struggles against that monarchy, and has been for quite some time. And they have some of the absolute worst labor laws in Southeast Asia, and that's really saying something. So,
right. Well, and I totally understand what you're saying, but let me just say that, my daddy brought me up that you take the low-hanging fruit when you're hungry. You know what I'm saying? And what I'm saying is that you can get, I believe, an overwhelming majority of both left and right-wing politicians, if there's enough publicity put on it, to say we will not import any more. Now, forget about tariffs. I'm talking about an embargo on all Chinese imports until the literal slaves. I'm not talking about the cheap labor. I'm talking about the freaking slaves that are in concentration camps in the numbers of 4 million that are being leased out to Nike to make cheap goods to bring into the United States. That's just insane. We've got to, if you want to stand up for labor, let's stand up for labor. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. But what we're talking about is organizing people. We're talking about organizing people at ULA, at the United Launch Alliance in Decatur. And so, when he's talking to his conservative member, I don't think that what the International's United States legislative agenda is going to, I mean, I could be wrong.
Let me tell you why that's incorrect.
But I think
the reason that's incorrect is because if we stopped importing all that stuff from China, we'd have to get it from somewhere. Yeah. It would make it possible for us to get it from a pop-up. We used to make all of the fabric for cubicle panels up in North Carolina, right? We don't do that anymore. We import all that stuff from China. I mean, Herman Miller, all those other places that actually build their own cubicle panels, they still have to import those fabrics from China. It's ridiculous, right? We can make that stuff here.
Most of the textile manufacturing has been moved from China. It's down in Southeast Asia, Cambodia, Bangladesh. It's more than just China. China is an easy target because they're sort of the big boogeyman of the national security state. And to be honest, that isn't really the big problem facing working people. You talk about growing the pie, and growing the pie is important, sure, but the problem is you do have to be concerned about how that pie is distributed, because eventually
Sure.
once
But if we're
people
not making any pies in the United
once people have a certain amount of power and money, they're going to use that to re-entrench their power and money and use it to screw over working people.
Right,
Like
but
that's just how the world is.
If we get the labor, an extra 10% of the pie, but we're not making any pies at all, then there's a problem, right? We've got to make a situation where we can equalize the competition. And I've asked my conservative friends, and I have friends that are more conservative than me, would we be willing to pay 15% more at Walmart in order to free the slaves in China? They say yes, absolutely. You know what I mean? And I do focus on China because it's low-hanging fruit. I think we need to reinvigorate manufacturing here, and we need to stop importing from all these places. But if we could stop bringing in $700 billion a year worth of stuff from China, that would be a good start, wouldn't you think?
So I just want to, sort of jump in here. So one thing that, I don't know if you would say it's a hobby or specialization or whatever, is I'm very, conscious of the sort of rhetoric that we as labor and as sort of left-wing, political and working class activists that we take on, right? And so, when we make these sorts of arguments, we have to be very careful that we're not simply appropriating the rights sort of arguments about internationalism and workers and stuff like that for our purposes. So the thing is that, I'm not going to sit here and necessarily defend, as I'm pretty sure you're talking about the situation with the Uyghurs in Southwest
and the
China.
Tibetans and the unapologetic Christians and the anti-communist thinkers. Those are all, those are the groups that make up those 4 million slaves in China.
Absolutely. And so the thing is that when we discuss labor and we discuss these international issues, we have to keep foremost in our mind the sort of backbone and driving force of unionism, both here and abroad. And it's internationalism, it's solidarity. It's that when we talk about pursuing policies like embargoes, which have been historically shown not to necessarily hurt the governments that they're targeting, but the working class that have to live under those governments. We have to really make sure that in our efforts to build up American industry and to make sure that American workers not only get more of the pie, but that we expand the pie in order to give more to American workers, that we're not pursuing a rhetorical infrastructure that will have a negative impact on our brothers, sisters, and comrades abroad, because either our labor solidarity is international,
when I hear that,
or it's nothing.
I hear
right?
that you are okay with slave labor in China as long as you can make money here on the upper levels of your union organization, as opposed to at the low end. That's what I hear.
Hold on.
Like that. Like part of the problem is, like, you're talking about slave labor in China, but you're not willing to address, like, are you willing to ban sort of forced prison labor here in the United States? Angola prison in Louisiana is literally an ex-plantation that continues to have mostly black people pick cotton, and the descendants of overseers serve as guards. Are you going to talk about abolishing that?
Absolutely. Any forced labor,
then at least you're consistent. It's better than you can say for a lot of folks.
But the thing is that here's the most important thing. The question is how to connect with a conservative in the South, because they do have things that overlap. But the unions have things that overlap. I mean, we believe if you're going to spend money from the government money, we believe spending money on job training is better than just spending money arbitrarily on handouts. Unions do great job training, right? Somebody is out there and they're trying to figure out how to get their life started. They get in a union, they learn a trade, they make lots of money, right? That's a good thing. That's a positive message that the conservatives can grab onto. But as long as you're going to be running around calling the workers in China your comrades, and not being willing to condemn slave labor abroad, to move more labor back here to the United States. We want to be self-sufficient. We want to be able to build whatever we want to build here in the United States without having to import everything.
And here's the thing is, I don't think he was not condemning slave labor, and I'm not going to speak for Douglas because he does a wonderful job speaking for himself, but it wasn't that he was not condemning slave labor. What he is saying was, does it hurt other workers across the international spectrum? And we have to be careful when we do these carte blanche tariffs that we don't hurt workers in other places. And honestly,
again, I wasn't talking about tariffs. I was talking about an embargo.
Well, an embargo.
But I'll leave you to that because I've got because tariffs don't have enough teeth to get this done. If they lost the American business that they're getting in China, they would have to make major reforms. And the reason is because their economy would go through the floor.
Yeah, well, so would ours, because if you look at what is being offshored by America, and that's why you're never going to get it done, because on the right and on the left, they don't have the political wherewithal to stand up to corporations and say, this is what's going to happen, because everybody's making a killing, and that's where a lot of their money's coming from.
You gotta not give up the fight. I mean, and that's the first step of the fight. But I gotta jump off. I've got some work.
Hey, we appreciate your call. Thank you very much.
Thanks for the call. I appreciate it. Yeah, but I mean, I think it's something like 90% of our antibiotics are manufactured in China. Those are things that we got to make sure that we're not going to hurt folks over. We're not going to hurt workers in China or Southwest China or Southwest Asia. And we got to make sure that we're not going to, shoot ourselves in the foot, too. Those are definitely things to consider. Folks, we got one more segment here on the Valley Labor Report with Douglas and Bryan. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Valley Labor Report with David Story and Jacob Morrison.
The Valley Labor Report is also supported by listeners like you. If you value the work that we are doing, injecting a different perspective into talk radio, and you have the means, consider signing up for a monthly donation on patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report. Again, that's patreon.com/The Valley Labor Report to support our work and keep us on the air. People across Alabama are hurting. Elected leaders have bailed out corporations while sending only a one-time cash payment to working families despite record unemployment and a public health crisis. Hometown Action is fighting for working people across Alabama to build inclusive and sustainable small town and rural communities. Hometown Action demands that Congress pass a people's bailout that expands health care, sends cash payments to families, and invests in green jobs to restart the economy. Now is the time to act. Learn more at www.hometownaction.org. The American Federation of Government Employees, AFGE Local 1858, believes all workers are entitled to fairness, dignity, and respect. AFGE also knows that the best way to guarantee proper treatment is for workers to stand together, united, looking out for each other. In AFGE, we fight for workers every day to ensure a workplace that is safe and free from harassment. If you're a federal employee and want to be a part of this union, to protect yourself and your fellow workers, call 256-876-4880. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time, but the attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maple, Tucker & Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtandj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
WVNN. Depend on it.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host David Story. On the line, we have Douglas Williams, an educator and organizer with the Machinists Union, Bryan Conlon, an organizer with AFGE, both of them contributing editors to Strike Wave. We'll wrap up that conversation that we were having with the caller really quick about international trade and such. And then I did have one more topic that I wanted to throw out to Douglas and Bryan while we've got them on the line. But my kind of closing thoughts on that is that I think that unions are definitely opposed to slave labor, forced labor globally. I think and unions, anytime that there's an international trade agreement, always push for stronger labor protections in other countries to help workers in those countries and to help workers in this country so that we are not having to compete with these with exploitation and such things like that. And unions do that. Unions already do that in international trade negotiations, and it is the Democrats and Republicans who fight against unions on those issues. But also, and I think that maybe tariffs have their place, maybe embargoes have their place. But like Douglas was saying, we do need to make sure that we take into account how it's going to affect American workers and how it's going to affect our brothers and sisters across the sea, because we have seen tariffs in other countries tariffs from us absolutely decimate workers in other countries, really hurt their ability to make money, to buy groceries, to have medicines, and we cannot, it is immoral, it is absolutely immoral in my view to say, for the sake of an American worker making $2 or $3 or $4 an hour more, that we let somebody go without medicine in Venezuela or Thailand or China or et cetera, et cetera. And so that's my wrap up on that. If anybody else wants to wrap up or has any other thoughts.
So, for me, when we start talking about how do we reach conservatives and stuff like that, well, let me tell you something. So in the referendum on right to work in Missouri, there's this county in Missouri called Cape Girardeau County. Now, perhaps some of your listeners may not know where that is or why that's significant. It's close to the boot heel of Missouri, down in the southeast. It is also the home of one Rush Limbaugh. In fact, the federal courthouse in Cape Girardeau County is the Rush Hudson Limbaugh Sr. United States Federal Courthouse. That was his grandfather was a federal judge. Labor broke even in Cape Girardeau County on the issue of right to work. This is one of the most conservative counties in the state. Now, listen, right? We can sit here and we can make our case for unions and for collective power based on things like, embargoes abroad or not wanting to give people handouts and things of that nature. But then all we're doing is repurposing right-wing rhetoric for our own, purposes. And part of what we do with our rhetoric is not just to meet people where they're at. It's also to progress them beyond where they've been. And that's why, to me, that is a strategy that simply does not work. When we talk about these issues, we have to talk about them under the vein of internationalism, under the vein of labor progress. Right? Because the thing is, maybe you would pay $4 or $5 more at Walmart if something was made in the United States. But one thing I can tell you about the workers at Walmart is that they will perceive precisely zero of that increased cost, because Walmart is a notorious anti-worker union busting company. And so we really have to be careful about how we make these cases, in that we're not simply aping the rhetoric of the right, but moving people towards a place that is more just and more equal, and getting them to see the benefits of showing solidarity with all workers, not just necessarily the ones that they live next to.
Yeah, and I think that's well spoken, brilliantly spoken. It's it becomes difficult. It becomes very difficult. And I mean, you can see where the last caller was going, and no disrespect to him, but I mean, all we're concerned about is 4,000 slaves being held in China, and I recognize he was saying that's the low hanging fruit, but it certainly there's certainly more to the international workers movement than 4,000 people being held in China. Much.
And I'd argue that ain't the low-hanging fruit. The low-hanging fruit's prison labor in the United States.
Absolutely.
That's what we have direct control over.
Yeah, we have direct control over it. We could get like Congress and state legislatures to ban the practice, or at least make them pay folks who are incarcerated who are working, at least make them pay minimum wage. But right now you've got people working for 50 cents an hour. And they're doing backbreaking work, and it is
they're doing phone banking for
Mike Bloomberg.
For Mike Bloomberg. Yeah. I mean, it's a perfect example.
Oh my
gosh. Tons of it. Like military equipment too, uniforms, body armor, helmets, like institutional furniture. All these things are being produced in prisons. It is a billion-dollar industry. And
that's being privatized.
It's partially privatized, but Unicor is the federal sector's prison labor arm, and it's still government owned, and it makes an ungodly amount of money.
It's but and it goes back to the same thing, and not being. It is going to be it's an uphill battle to fight these things when both political parties are 100% supportive of it. I mean, you may have a few, that will come out and speak out against it, but the fact is, until it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, until you have members on the ground, rank and file members, that's calling their representative or their senator and saying we're not supportive of this, you're not going to move the needle on it.
Yeah, and well, unfortunately, we had a caller ask about ballot referendums in Alabama, and my understanding...
We got about a minute left.
Yeah, my understanding is that there's no mechanism for citizens to just put something on the ballot in Alabama. It has to come through the legislature, and so that's really unfortunate, anti-democratic. But the legislature could pass a law that would open up that process for us if they wanted to. So if that's something that you're interested in, you should maybe write your representative or tell them that that's something that we deserve here in Alabama. But as of right now, there doesn't really exist any mechanism for having that. I really want to thank Douglas and Bryan for coming on. We really enjoyed the conversation. Again, Douglas Williams is an educator and organizer with the Machinists Union. Bryan Conlon is an organizer with the American Federation for Government Employees. We've enjoyed talking to them. Folks, tell them where they can find you here in the last 30 seconds.
TheStrikewave.com.
Strikewave.com. Go to strikewave.com and tune in again next week to the Valley Labor Report. We got a special episode for you.